Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel, and if you are new here, make sure to hit that subscribe button, because today we're diving into something you spend roughly a third of your life doing, but probably do not fully understand: sleep. And I am not just talking about sleep hygiene tips or how many hours you need, though we will touch on that. I am talking about the psychology of sleep, why your brain needs it so desperately, what happens in your mind while you are sleeping. Why sleep problems are so intimately connected to mental health. Because here is the thing. Sleep is not just your body shutting down for maintenance. It is not wasted time or something you can hack your way out of needing. Sleep is an active, essential psychological process where your brain is doing critical work that cannot happen while you are awake. And when sleep goes wrong, your entire psychological functioning suffers in ways that are profound and often underestimated. So today we're breaking down the fascinating psychology of sleep. What your brain is actually doing while you sleep, why sleep and mental health are inseparable, the psychology of insomnia and sleep disorders, and what you can actually do to work with your brain rather than against it when it comes to sleep. Let us start with the fundamental question: why do we sleep? From an evolutionary perspective, sleep seems like a terrible idea. You are unconscious, vulnerable to predators, not gathering food, not reproducing, not doing anything productive. The fact that every animal sleeps despite these massive survival costs tells you how absolutely critical sleep must be. And the answer is that sleep serves multiple essential functions, many of them psychological. During sleep, your brain is consolidating memories, taking the experiences and information from your day and integrating them into long-term storage. Without sleep, memory formation is severely impaired. Sleep is also when your brain processes emotions. During a REM sleep in particular, your brain is working through emotional experiences, integrating them, and reducing their emotional intensity. This is why things often feel less overwhelming after a good night of sleep, and why sleep deprivation leaves you emotionally raw and reactive. Sleep also clears metabolic waste products from your brain. There is a glymphatic system that essentially power washes your brain during sleep, removing toxic proteins that accumulate during waking hours. Sleep regulates hormones, supports immune function, restores energy, and allows your prefrontal cortex, the rational, executive control center of your brain, to reset. Basically, sleep is when your brain does the maintenance, organization, and emotional processing that keeps you psychologically functional. Now let us talk about sleep architecture, because understanding the stages of sleep helps explain why quality matters as much as quantity. Sleep is not a uniform state. You cycle through different stages multiple times per night, and each stage serves different psychological functions. There is light sleep, which is stages 1 and 2, where you are drifting off, and then in relatively light sleep that is easy to wake from. This is important for the transition into deeper sleep. Then there is deep sleep, also called slow wave sleep or stage 3, which is the most restorative physically. This is when your body does repair work, and it is also crucial for memory consolidation, particularly for declarative memories like facts and events. Deep sleep is concentrated in the first half of the night. Then there is REM sleep, which stands for rapid eye movement, and this is where most vivid dreaming occurs. REM sleep is psychologically fascinating because your brain is extremely active, almost as active as when you are awake, but your body is paralyzed to prevent you from acting out dreams. REM sleep is critical for emotional processing, creative problem solving, procedural memory consolidation like motor skills, and integrating new information with existing knowledge. You cycle through these stages roughly every 90 minutes, and you need adequate amounts of each stage for optimal psychological functioning. If your sleep is fragmented or you're not getting enough total sleep, you miss out on critical REM cycles, which has immediate psychological consequences. Let us discuss the bidirectional relationship between sleep and mental health, because this is absolutely crucial to understand. Poor sleep does not just make you tired, it fundamentally alters your psychological state. Sleep deprivation impairs your prefrontal cortex, which is responsible for emotional regulation, rational thinking, impulse control, and decision-making. At the same time, it increases amygdala reactivity, which is your brain's threat detection and emotional response center. So when you are sleep-deprived, you are essentially operating with an overactive emotional brain and an underactive rational brain. This is why everything feels more stressful, more overwhelming, and more emotionally intense when you have not slept well. You are more irritable, more anxious, more likely to catastrophize, less able to regulate emotions, and more prone to impulsive decisions. Sleep deprivation is also strongly linked to depression. Chronic poor sleep increases depression risk dramatically, and insomnia often precedes depressive episodes. But the relationship goes both ways. Mental health conditions also disrupt sleep. Anxiety keeps you awake with racing thoughts and hyperarousal. Depression can cause both insomnia and hypersomnia. PTSD creates nightmares and hypervigilance that prevent restful sleep. Bipolar disorder involves sleep disturbances during both manic and depressive phases. So you get vicious cycles where poor sleep worsens mental health, which further disrupts sleep, which worsens mental health. Breaking this cycle often requires addressing both the sleep and the mental health conditions simultaneously. Now let us dive into the psychology of insomnia, because this is one of the most common sleep problems, and it is deeply psychological. Insomnia is not just having trouble sleeping occasionally, it is persistent difficulty falling asleep, staying asleep, or waking too early, occurring at least 3 nights per week for at least 3 months, and causing significant distress or impairment. And here is what is fascinating. Most chronic insomnia is maintained by psychological factors, specifically by what you think and do in response to poor sleep. This is called psychophysiological insomnia, and it develops through a process of conditioning and cognitive patterns. It often starts with a period of poor sleep due to stress, illness, or life changes. But then you start worrying about sleep, trying to force sleep, catastrophizing about the consequences of not sleeping, and your bed becomes associated with frustration and wakefulness rather than sleep. You develop performance anxiety around sleep. The harder you try to sleep, the more aroused your nervous system becomes, which makes sleep impossible. You start engaging in behaviors that seem helpful but actually perpetuate insomnia, spending excessive time in bed hoping to catch up on sleep, napping during the day, going to bed super early, sleeping in, checking the clock repeatedly, trying to force sleep. All of these behaviors disrupt your circadian rhythm and strengthen the association between your bed and wakefulness. Your thoughts about sleep become catastrophic and distorted. If I do not sleep tonight, I will not be able to function. I will get sick if I do not sleep. I am going to be awake all night. These thoughts increase anxiety, which increases arousal, which prevents sleep. So insomnia becomes self-perpetuating through a combination of conditioned arousal, catastrophic thinking, and counterproductive behaviors. Let us talk about the psychology of circadian rhythms, because your sleep-wake cycle is not just about feeling tired, it is regulated by complex biological and psychological processes. You have an internal biological clock, located in the suprachiasmatic nucleus of your brain, that runs on roughly a 24-hour cycle and regulates when you feel alert versus sleepy. This clock is influenced by external cues, primarily light exposure, but also activity, meals, and social schedules. Your circadian rhythm affects not just sleep, but also body temperature, hormone release, alertness, and mood throughout the day. Psychologically, this means there are times when your brain is primed for sleep and times when it is primed for wakefulness, and working against your circadian rhythm creates problems. This is why shift work and jet lag are so psychologically taxing. You are trying to sleep when your brain thinks it should be awake, and trying to be alert when your brain thinks it should be sleeping. It is also why keeping an irregular sleep schedule, going to bed and waking at wildly different times, creates ongoing sleep difficulties. Your brain thrives on consistency, and when you send it mixed signals about when sleep should occur, it responds with fragmented sleep and daytime fatigue. There's also the psychological concept of sleep pressure, which is the accumulation of adenosine in your brain throughout the day. The longer you are awake, the more sleep pressure builds, making you feel sleepy. Sleep clears adenosine, reducing sleep pressure. Caffeine works by blocking adenosine receptors, which is why it makes you feel alert. But the adenosine is still accumulating, so when the caffeine wears off, you feel the crash. Understanding sleep pressure helps explain why napping can interfere with nighttime sleep. You are reducing the sleep pressure that would help you fall asleep at bedtime. It also explains why sleeping in on weekends can make it harder to sleep Sunday night. You are not building sufficient sleep pressure throughout the day. Let us discuss sleep anxiety and the fear of not sleeping, because this is a powerful psychological factor that maintains insomnia. Some people develop such intense anxiety about sleep that the bedroom becomes a source of dread rather than rest. They lie awake worrying about not sleeping, calculating how many hours they could still get if they fell asleep right now, catastrophizing about tomorrow, and their nervous system is in full fight or flight mode, which is the opposite of the relaxed state needed for sleep. This creates a conditioned response where the bed triggers anxiety, which prevents sleep, which reinforces the anxiety. The psychology here is similar to phobias. The fear itself becomes the problem, and the more you try to avoid or control the feared outcome, the worse it gets. Breaking this cycle requires reducing the fear and anxiety around sleep, which seems counterintuitive but is essential. So what does the psychology of sleep tell us about how to actually improve sleep? First, understand that sleep cannot be forced. It is not something you do, it is something you allow to happen. Your job is to create the conditions that make sleep possible, not to make yourself sleep. This reduces performance anxiety. Second, cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia, called CBTI, is the gold standard treatment, and it is more effective than sleep medication for long-term insomnia. CBTI involves several components. Sleep restriction, which sounds harsh but involves limiting time in bed to match actual sleep time, which builds sleep pressure and strengthens the bed-sleep association. Stimulus control, which means using the bed only for sleep and sex, going to bed only when sleepy, leaving the bed if you cannot sleep after 15 to 20 minutes, and keeping a consistent wake time. Cognitive restructuring, which challenges catastrophic thoughts about sleep. And relaxation techniques. These approaches work because they address the psychological mechanisms maintaining insomnia. Third, protect your circadian rhythm by keeping consistent sleep and wake times, getting bright light exposure in the morning, dimming lights in the evening, and avoiding screens before bed because blue light suppresses melatonin. Fourth, create a psychological wind-down routine that signals to your brain that sleep is approaching. This could be reading, gentle stretching, meditation, or any calming activity that becomes associated with the transition to sleep. Fifth, address underlying mental health conditions because anxiety, depression, and trauma all disrupt sleep and need treatment. Sixth, examine your beliefs and attitudes about sleep. If you are catastrophizing about sleep or holding unrealistic expectations, that is feeding the problem. And seventh, practice acceptance of occasional poor sleep. Everyone has bad nights, and the more you fight it or panic about it, the more likely it becomes chronic. When you can accept that a rough night will not destroy you, the anxiety decreases, which paradoxically makes sleep easier. If this video helped you understand the psychology of sleep, please give it a thumbs up and share it with someone who struggles with sleep. Drop a comment. What is your biggest sleep challenge? And have you noticed how sleep affects your mental state? And if you are struggling with chronic insomnia or sleep issues that are affecting your life, please consider seeing a sleep psychologist or therapist trained in CBTI. Sleep is not a luxury or something to sacrifice for productivity. It is a fundamental psychological need, and you deserve rest. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.